Hey there, I'm Stacy, and I'm 37 years old. My husband, Eric, and I were throwing a party at our house to welcome back my brother-in-law, Uncle Isaac. He had just come home after spending 5 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Yep, you heard that right, prison. But before you jump to conclusions about him or our family, let me tell you, Isaac was innocent. He got caught up in something he had nothing to do with. It took 5 long years of legal battles to prove his innocence and set him free. So you can imagine how excited we all were to have him back with us. The party was buzzing, everyone having a great time. Isaac was in the spotlight, catching up with everyone and sharing stories from his time in prison. He had a special bond with my daughter, Wendy, who used to be really close to him before all this mess happened. Laughter and lively chats echoed through the house. The smell of yummy food filled the air as we all enjoyed a feast fit for royalty. It was a special time for our family, filled with happiness and togetherness, which made my heart feel warm. Once the party ended and everyone left, we were still buzzing with excitement. We were thankful to see Isaac back with us, alive, happy, and healthy after his unfair time in prison. Life went back to normal, and it felt like the drama in our family had calmed down, at least for a little while. But sadly, that happy feeling didn't last long. A couple of days after the party, I was sitting in the living room, lost in a book, when Wendy burst in looking scared and angry. I quickly put my book down and went to her side, worried about what had happened. "Wendy, what's the matter? You look really scared. Tell me what's going on," I said, my voice filled with worry. Tears were rolling down Wendy's cheeks as she struggled to catch her breath. "Mom, I found something. A camera. Hidden in one of my plants." My heart raced and I felt a surge of fear. A hidden camera in my daughter's room, it made my blood boil. But I had to stay calm for Wendy. We hurried to her room, my mind racing with questions. And there it was, tucked away among the leaves of her favorite plant. A tiny camera, invading her privacy. How long had it been there? I felt a mix of disgust, fear, and anger rising inside me. I wasted no time and called Eric right away, my voice shaky with a mix of feelings as I shared the shocking news. "Eric, you won't believe what I just found out. There's a hidden camera in Wendy's room. We need to act fast." Eric sounded both concerned and furious. "I'm coming over, Stacy. We're not going to let this slide. Our daughter deserves her privacy, and whoever did this will pay for it." While we waited for Eric, Wendy clung to me, her tears soaking my shirt. She blamed herself for not noticing the camera sooner, but I assured her it wasn't her fault. I promised to support her through this unsettling situation. When Eric arrived, his eyes reflected our emotions. Anger barely contained beneath a calm surface. We carefully examined the camera, searching for any clues that could lead us to the person responsible. It was a betrayal of trust that hurt deeply, and we were determined to uncover the truth. The invasion of our safe space shattered the feeling of security we had worked so hard to build for our family. We needed to take action quickly, not only to protect our daughter, but also to restore our peace of mind. If there was one hidden camera in Wendy's room, who knew how many more might be lurking elsewhere in our home? "Don't worry, Wendy. We won't stop until we find out who did this," I reassured her. "Thanks, Mom. Can I please nap in the guest room?" "I don't feel comfortable in mine right now, and I'm really tired," Wendy asked. "Of course, sweetheart. You do what you need to feel safe." "I'm so sorry this happened," I replied gently. Wendy headed to the guest room, likely wanting some time alone after her privacy had been violated. I couldn't shake off the feeling of malice. Who could do something like this? We decided to review the footage, gather any evidence we could find, and involve the authorities if necessary. Nobody messes with our family like this. Though I was shaken, I found comfort in knowing Eric and I were on the same page. We sat together in the quiet of our living room, the seriousness of the situation weighing heavily on us. Our minds raced, trying to figure out who could have planted the camera in Wendy's room. As we talked it through, one name kept coming up: Isaac. I broached the subject carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. The timing is hard to ignore. The camera was likely planted during the family gathering, and who had the opportunity? Isaac. "Stacy, you can't seriously think Isaac would do something like this." "Yes, he's had his problems, but he's not a creep. He's my brother, for crying out loud," Eric protested. I understood Eric's reaction completely. Family bonds are strong, and suspecting a relative of such a violation feels almost unthinkable. But I couldn't ignore the clues that seemed to point towards Isaac's involvement during the family gathering. Gathering my thoughts, I spoke softly but firmly. Eric, I know it's tough to consider, but we have to face reality. Isaac spent a lot of time with Wendy at the gathering, which suggests he may have had some interest in her. Plus, he just got out of prison. People change, and their experiences can influence their actions. Our priority is to protect our daughter, even if it means questioning those closest to us. Eric looked weighed down by the situation, torn between loyalty and the evidence. Eventually, he nodded slowly, his voice filled with a mix of resignation and discomfort. I don't want to believe it, Stacy, but you're right. The timing and circumstances are hard to ignore. We have to find out the truth for Wendy's sake. The idea of confronting Isaac about the betrayal weighed heavily on our minds, but we knew it was necessary. The safety of our home and our daughter depended on it. As we brace ourselves for the tough conversation ahead, we promised to approach it with care and empathy. Finding the truth was crucial not just for our own peace, but to protect Wendy from any further harm. Days passed, and Eric struggled with conflicting feelings, loyalty to his brother versus the nagging suspicion in the back of his mind. The tension strained our relationship with Isaac and cast a shadow over our family as we grappled with uncertainty. A plan started to take shape in my mind. Risky, but it felt necessary to catch the culprit. I shared my idea with Eric, suggesting that hosting another family gathering could be the key to uncovering the truth. Think about it, Eric. Whoever planted that camera might try to retrieve it during another family event. This gathering, meant for bringing us together, could give us the chance to catch them in the act. Eric hesitated, still torn between his loyalty to his brother and the need to uncover the truth. But as I explained the urgency of our situation, he eventually agreed that we had to explore every option before getting the authorities involved. It was a tough choice, but necessary to protect our family and regain our sense of safety. I called Tina, Isaac's wife, to propose the idea of another family gathering. Hey Tina, we were thinking of having another family get-together. Are you and Isaac free to join us? Tina's response was surprisingly enthusiastic. She eagerly accepted, expressing her excitement for another gathering. It struck me as a bit odd, since she was usually more reserved, but I brushed it off, thinking she was just happy for family time. With the plans in motion, Eric and I focused on getting everything ready. Our home buzzed with anticipation and tension. We checked every corner for signs of intrusion, aiming to create a sense of normalcy while secretly preparing to catch the culprit. The stakes were high as the day of the gathering drew near, and our family's future hung in the balance. I felt a mix of nerves and determination. We were stepping into the unknown, but we were prepared to face whatever came our way to keep our daughter safe and our home secure. When the day arrived, our home filled with familiar faces once more. Excitement buzzed in the air, but underneath tension simmered. Uncle Isaac, ever charming, greeted everyone warmly, but Eric and I couldn't shake our suspicions. They loomed over us, casting a shadow on the festivities. To ensure Wendy's safety, we made the tough call to keep her away from the gathering, arranging a sleepover with a friend without revealing our concerns. With her gone, our focus sharpened, and we kept a watchful eye on anyone near her room. As the party started, laughter and chatter masked our true intentions. Eric and I played the part of hosts while secretly watching for any suspicious behavior. Our detective skills were in full swing. As the night went on, the music and dancing created a lively atmosphere, masking our true intentions. But amidst the celebration, I couldn't ignore Tina's strange behavior. She kept excusing herself, rushing off to the bathroom with an unusual urgency. My instincts kicked in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Driven by curiosity, I decided to approach her. When Tina headed towards the bathroom once more, I followed quietly, my heart racing. But instead of going inside, she turned and entered Wendy's room. Panic surged through me. I knew I had to confront her, to uncover the truth behind her actions. Stepping forward, I called out her name, my voice tinged with both accusation and concern. Tina, what are you doing in Wendy's room? Startled, Tina spun around, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. But there was no escaping the truth. The tension between us thickened, heavy with unspoken accusations. I asked you a question, Tina. What are you doing in my daughter's room? Tina's facade cracked, tears welling in her eyes. Her voice shook as she said, "I was just looking for Wendy. I was surprised she wasn't with us for the party." "You were going through her drawers," I pointed out, my tone unwavering. Tina looked down, realizing her hands were still in the drawer she'd been searching. I can explain." "Save it." The person we least expected, the one we had staunchly defended, had betrayed our trust. The room swirled with a whirlwind of disbelief and disappointment. I motioned for Eric to join me, and he rushed over, assuming we had caught Isaac in Wendy's room. But his expression turned to shock when he saw it was Tina. "You planted that camera, didn't you? Why, Tina? Why would you do something like this?" Eric demanded, his voice laced with anger and pain. Without hesitation, Eric called Isaac over to Wendy's room, his tone firm and commanding. Isaac, sensing the urgency, quickly joined us, confusion written all over his face. As Isaac stepped into the room, his gaze fell on Tina, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before anyone could say another word, Eric quietly closed the door, shielding the rest of the party from the unfolding drama. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my voice as I began to explain everything. I recounted the shocking discovery of the camera in Wendy's room, the invasion of their privacy that had shattered their trust. My words hung heavy in the air, the truth weighing down the room. "We planned this gathering, Isaac, to catch whoever planted the camera. And to be honest, we initially suspected you." "Bro, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have doubted you, especially after everything with prison," Eric interjected, his voice filled with regret. "But it was mostly me who accused you, Isaac. I'm truly sorry. After finding Tina here, I realized you weren't involved." Isaac's brows furrowed, confusion clouding his expression as he looked between Stacy, Eric, and Tina. He turned to Tina, seeking answers. "Tina, why were you in Wendy's room? What's going on?" "We caught Tina going through Wendy's things. She's the one who planted the camera. Now that everyone's here, Tina, you need to explain yourself. Why would you do something like this?" Tina's eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but Isaac's shock mirrored the confusion in the room. He couldn't understand why Tina would do something so invasive, especially to her own family. Okay, you got me. Yes, I planted the camera in Wendy's room. I was just coming to take it back." "We already know that. We caught you. We want to know why," Eric pressed. "Because I'm jealous, okay," Tina blurted out. Tina's confession hung heavy in the air, exposing her jealousy for all to see. She admitted, with a mix of shame and frustration, that her actions were driven by envy towards Wendy. She had noticed Isaac and Wendy talking a lot during the last family gathering, and it sparked jealousy within her. She questioned what made Wendy so special, what drew Isaac's attention and affection towards her. Isaac felt the need to defend himself, his voice tinged with defensiveness and genuine concern. "Tina, you know I care about Wendy, but not in a weird way. Being her uncle is important to me. I was just checking on her, making sure she was okay. It was out of love and family concern, nothing strange." "But why were you always praising Wendy? It made me wonder what was so great about her," Tina countered, her jealousy still evident. "So you're upset because I'm proud of being an uncle?" "Tina, is there something wrong with being proud of my niece? I have every right to support and appreciate Wendy. It's not about playing favorites, it's just genuine love for family." "I didn't expect you to react like this." Trying to navigate the emotions in the room, I turned to Tina. "What were you hoping to find by planting the camera? What did you think you'd uncover?" "I just wanted to see how Wendy lives, you know. Maybe if I understood her better and acted like her, I could get the same attention from you, Isaac. I wanted to feel valued like she is." "You're acting crazy, Tina. Jealous of a teenager. That's messed up," Isaac snapped, his frustration evident. After an awkward silence that could rival a library, Eric decided to end the party. "Good call," I agreed. "The last thing we need is to keep partying after discovering Tina's true colors." The resident creep of the year. Once the relatives were gone, it was just Eric and me left to deal with the fallout of Tina's actions. And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. I unleashed a verbal storm on Tina, making a sailor blush. I mean, who does that? Who plants a camera in their niece's room? Sick, that's who. Isaac looked lost, disappointment written all over his face. I guess he couldn't believe what his wife had done. Can't say I blame him. I'd be equally stunned if my partner turned out to be a lunatic. As the dust settled and our emotions ran dry, Eric and I found ourselves sitting in our once cheerful home, now tainted by one family member's sinister acts. The next day, when Wendy returned, it fell to me to break the news to expose the twisted truth. Tears filled Wendy's eyes as I recounted the violation of her privacy. The poor girl, innocent and unsuspecting, couldn't believe someone in our own family could do something so awful. Mom, I never imagined this could happen, especially from Tina. Seriously. Wendy's disbelief mirrored my own. I shook my head, struggling to comprehend it myself. I know it's hard to believe. Tina's really crossed a line. With Wendy in my arms, her tears staining my shoulder, I made her a promise. We were going to fight back. Pressing charges was just the beginning. Tina needed a reality check, and we were ready to give it to her. Her tearful eyes met mine, seeking reassurance. But Mom, how is Uncle Isaac doing? I sighed, the weight of our shattered family hanging heavily in the air. Honestly, he's struggling. It's hard for him to celebrate his freedom knowing he's married to someone who's acted so terribly. So, are they getting a divorce? I don't know, sweetheart. I hate what she's done to us. Me too. But right now, our priority is your safety. We're getting a restraining order against Tina so she won't come near you again. We're pressing charges and getting a restraining order against Tina, the one with the camera, and the bond between Isaac and our family. It's strained, shattered by this betrayal. There's an awkward silence between us, a reminder of how far jealousy can go. But we're determined to rebuild and find comfort in those who truly care. The road ahead might be tough, but we're ready to face it. Our family's love will help us through.
I had a great time with the $20,000 I recently saved up. After returning from a week-long trip overseas, my mother-in-law Isabella called me excitedly, mentioning something about saving $20,000. I was puzzled because I didn't remember having such a large sum. As a freelancer, I do have some emergency savings in my bank account, but I don't usually keep that much cash. Plus, my banking card was right here, and no one else should be able to withdraw such a large amount without my knowledge. Isabella claimed she took the money from the sideboard drawer, assuming we were rich. I thanked her for her good intentions but didn't understand why she thought I had given her the money. After this brief conversation, I wondered where the $20,000 came from. The mystery was solved when Anthony, presumably her husband, returned home a month later. Fast forward to a month later, and Isabella made over 80 calls, which I ignored. When I finally answered, she accused me of something, and I didn't quite understand. It seemed like she was upset, but I couldn't figure out why. Isabella's persistent calls became annoying, and when I finally answered, she started blaming me for something. Confused, I realized she was reaping what she had sown. Isabella's voice echoed loudly through the phone speaker as I learned her name was Scarlett, a 32-year-old freelance jewelry designer. I really want children, but my job keeps me very busy. My husband, Anthony, who is the same age as me, used to have a regular job, but now he helps manage my work. When we got married, I wasn't making much as a designer, and we relied on Anthony's income. However, as I turned 30, my work became more stable, and I needed help managing my schedule. Anthony, who had a good position at his job, decided to quit and join me as a business partner. With his help, we now have deals with famous international brands. Although we face challenges as a couple, the main issue is Anthony's mother, Isabella, who lives alone in his family home. Isabella thinks we're living a luxurious life and often asks for money. She believes we live extravagantly, attending fancy parties and dinners with company executives. While these events are part of my job as a jewelry designer, Isabella sees them as leisure. She even asks for money to throw a party for her friends. I can afford to give her money, but it's not as glamorous as it seems. These events are expensive, and I have business obligations that I can't refuse. We're now living in luxury. It's all part of our work, dressing up beautifully and eating at expensive places. Isabella often expresses her envy towards us with a hint of sarcasm. Despite my continuous refusals to her requests, Anthony, being her son, sometimes gives in and hands her money. He believes it's a small price to pay to keep her quiet and avoid interruptions to our work. However, Isabella's demands only increase, leaving both of us frustrated. Recently, Isabella came over and pestered Anthony about buying a new dress for an upcoming gathering. Despite suggesting a more affordable two-piece suit, she insisted on an expensive dress for the fancy party. I believe proper attire, whether old or new, shouldn't matter, but Isabella makes a fuss. She also added that she needed a matching bag and was counting on us for that. To address Isabella's constant money demands, Anthony set up a credit card in her name, telling her to use it for her expenses. Initially, she overspent and got warned by Anthony. He then asked her to report before making significant purchases. However, Isabella continued to overspend, once even buying an expensive ring without prior notice. The bill became astronomical, and Anthony, who was paying the bills, couldn't afford it. Isabella seemed to think the credit card meant endless spending without consequences. Anthony, frustrated with the situation, decided to put a limit on her card spending. Isabella stormed in, complaining that she couldn't pay for her recent shopping, not realizing the financial strain her overspending was causing us. "We've lowered your monthly limit, but it's still enough, right?" Isabella challenged, questioning the fairness of our lifestyle. She argued that her desire for fun and luxury wasn't much different from our work-related dressing up and attending fancy places. We explained that events like product launches and parties were part of our job, often taking place in luxurious venues. However, Isabella perceived it as us having fun rather than working. Since putting a limit on her credit card, she had quieted down a bit. Occasionally, she would come to our house and complain to Anthony, but life went on without major issues. As the year-end approached, a foreign brand approached me with a proposal to expand our business overseas. Excited about the opportunity, I saw it as a chance to join the ranks of top-tier designers. Anthony, handling things as my manager, saw it as a rare opportunity we had to take. However, there was a concern about Isabella. Given her past behavior, it was plausible that she might want to come with us. When we told her about our plans that weekend, she reacted just as we predicted. Isabella insisted we were trying to trick her and live even more lavishly overseas. Anthony tried to explain that it was for work, not leisure, but Isabella wouldn't give up, fearing we planned to move there permanently. "We'll come back after our work settles down overseas," I reassured Isabella. She seemed worried that our plans would leave her behind. Both Anthony and I were exhausted from this circular argument. We couldn't take her with us, but Anthony, worn out from convincing her, suggested paying for a week-long trip for her instead. "Really? Are you sure?" Isabella half-happily accepted, and Anthony promised to cover her flight and hotel expenses. However, the peace didn't last long. A few days later, while Anthony was busy with overseas arrangements, Isabella visited our house. Anthony said that, "But I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money?" she requested. I asked about the card Anthony had given her, and she admitted he had taken it away, fearing she might misuse it with different currency rates overseas. I explained that I couldn't give her money without Anthony's approval. Isabella left, raising her voice, and over the New Year's, she went on a 7-day trip abroad. Upon her return, Isabella revealed an unbelievable truth. She called me excitedly, sharing her experiences and mentioning she had overspent on souvenirs. Feeling fed up, I asked about the money she claimed I had saved up for her. I had no recollection of such money, and the situation took an unexpected turn. I had some savings in my bank account for business emergencies, but Isabella couldn't possibly withdraw cash from it. Despite what she claimed, I had no memory of it. She said she found $20,000 in our house's sideboard drawer, and I was confused about why such money would be there. I couldn't imagine us keeping such a large amount of cash at home. I told Isabella that if she took money from our house without permission, it amounted to theft, even if she's family. I emphasized the seriousness of the situation, especially if Anthony had set the money aside for an important deal. There hadn't been any disruption in our business dealings or payments while Isabella was on her trip. Isabella nonchalantly admitted to using the money, saying, "I'm telling you now that I used it. I pointed out that taking someone else's money without permission is a crime and expressed my concern about her entitled reasoning. Isabella defended herself, saying, "You too live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that?" Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. I found her reasoning inappropriate, considering she took money without asking. I promised to ask Anthony about the money when he got back. Isabella believed Anthony would understand, being his only mother, and claimed that $20,000 wasn't much to him. I agreed to pass along the message, still uncertain about the entire situation. I was amazed at Isabella's lack of awareness, and she ended the call by saying, "Please tell him that, thanks." Still baffled by the $20,000 in cash at home, I asked Anthony about it when he returned that night. Anthony had withdrawn the money from his bank account 10 days ago for an urgent payment. He needed cash immediately, but I was surprised that he kept such a large sum in a drawer, considering the potential risks. Anthony, looking troubled, asked if I knew anything about it. Today, Isabella called, thanking us for the $20,000 and mentioning she had a blast with it. I didn't understand what she meant, but it turned out the money was Anthony's after all. However, we still didn't know what such a large amount was meant for. I questioned Anthony about why he had left such a large sum at home, especially when we usually did bank transfers. Anthony explained that after limiting Isabella's credit card amount, she had secretly borrowed money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she had opened without his knowledge. When Anthony discovered this, he took all her cards and prepared the cash to repay Isabella's growing debt. Although he gave her the cash, he knew she might spend it recklessly. The situation became clearer, but the mystery of Isabella's actions remained. I planned to pay the institutions directly through bank transfers, but Anthony preferred fewer records in our bank accounts for the sake of trust with our business partners in bookkeeping. So he decided to withdraw the cash and pay individually. Supporting Isabella's overseas trip was like a parting gift, knowing we wouldn't be able to take care of her like before after moving abroad. As time passed, Isabella's calls to my mobile phone became frequent, almost 80 calls every day. Anthony had advised me not to bother with her, but the persistence made me concerned. One day, Isabella's voice sounded almost like a cry as she apologized for bothering me during the busy moving preparations. She explained that she was receiving payment demands almost every day, and Anthony seemed to be blocking her calls. Isabella couldn't get through to him and pleaded for my help, saying I was her only hope. I was surprised that Anthony would take such a drastic step with his own mother. If he had used the money he prepared to pay off Isabella's debts, this situation might have been avoided. Now Isabella was inundated with collection letters from finance companies and consumer lenders, facing non-stop collections calls and seeming helpless to do anything about it. It was a scene I had only seen in dramas before. I mentioned it to Anthony, but I couldn't predict his response. Isabella pleaded for help, saying it was a son's duty to assist his mother. The call ended, and I told Anthony about it when he returned home, but he dismissed it coldly, stating that Isabella wasted the opportunity herself. Despite the continued calls from Isabella, I decided to block her number, following Anthony's lead. While I wished I could help, being Anthony's mother meant there was nothing I could do if he had chosen to ignore her. As the day of our move overseas approached, I needed to finish packing. Looking around the still cluttered room, I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of helplessness in the face of Isabella's predicament. It turned out that Isabella had to sell her house to settle her debts. In addition to the $20,000 Anthony had intended to use for repayment, she had hidden even more debts. The amount was so substantial that even after selling her land and house, she couldn't fully clear it. The total balance was unimaginable. Our family home was gone, and Anthony, though somewhat sad, acknowledged there was nothing we could do. Losing the house where one grew up must have felt like a significant loss. Anthony, having lost his place to return to because of his living mother, must have been feeling a deep sense of loss. Isabella now lived in a cheap apartment, struggling to repay the remaining debts with her part-time job. At her age, finding work must be challenging. I felt a bit of sympathy for her. However, the consequences of her spending led to this, so she was to blame. Even for the elderly, taking responsibility for their actions is necessary. Despite the challenges, my business was thriving overseas, and the move had brought more inquiries from other brands. I received offers from unexpected places, something I couldn't have imagined back home. Although it was all appreciated, I was so busy that I barely had time to sleep. Anthony, too, was occupied with various tasks. At this rate, having children was still a distant thought. I pondered this as I gazed at the foreign cityscape outside the window. Before long, we'll be selling this house and moving into a high-rise condo. So you better start looking for a new place. Maggie's mother, Karen, sneered, "You're not thinking you'll get a dime of our father's inheritance, are you? We're having you relinquish your right to it. You got that, Ashley?" My sister threatened me, her face a horrifying mask of cruelty. Ashley's boyfriend stood to the side, his laughter only adding salt to the wound. It was unbearable. Our father's funeral had barely finished, and they dared to talk like this. You heard the absolute worst. I can't stand this anymore. I'm cutting ties with you all. The moment I shouted those words, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man I felt like I'd met before. "My name is Maggie. At 22, I'm soon to graduate from university. Nothing to brag, but I'm strong-willed and patient. From my childhood through university, I've always quietly and diligently focused on my studies. I've maintained reasonably high grades, and I do have dreams I want to fulfill. Although I'm content with my daily life, I'd also have a significant worry. Maggie, come downstairs now." A loud voice rang from below. With reluctance, I went downstairs to find my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley. "Mom, sis, what's up?" I was studying, as usual. "You nerd. You're still studying even though university is almost over. What a hard worker." The one laughing was my sister, Ashley. A beauty like our mother, she's flamboyant and was even a popular model back in the day. Now she's unemployed, under the gaze of helping around the house. "We're going shopping. You should clean the dishes and do the laundry. Don't forget to iron properly, okay? Also, we're out of detergent and other things, so you should go shopping." Mother calmly ordered me to do the housework, knowing she would get furiously angry if I talked back. I quietly responded, "Okay." I left the house stressed out to the nines and high in spirits. "I need to get on with that," I muttered quietly as I started to clean up the mess they had left behind. Mom, a former beauty queen, has extravagant tastes and loves luxury. She's always favored my beautiful sister while ignoring me since I'm not all that pretty. Moreover, they've always dumped housework and other chores on me as if I'm their maid. My sister took advantage of this, and I've been oppressed by them since I was little. Yet I've tolerated it because, after all, we are family. And then my phone rang. When I looked at my phone screen, it read Dad. "Hello, Dad, it's been a while." I could tell my voice had brightened. "Oh, Maggie, it's been a while. Are you doing okay?" "I'm doing great. How about you, Dad? It's night there, right? How's work?" "I'd like to say I'm fine, but I've been having headaches lately. I'm planning to go see a doctor soon. How's your schoolwork? Is it going well, Dad? Take care of yourself, okay? Thanks to you, everything is going well. I'm studying hard to achieve my dream. That's my girl. You're always so diligent. Remember what I always say, be righteous and kind, right? Don't worry, I'm doing my best. That's my Maggie. I'll bring lots of souvenirs when I come home next time." After that conversation, I hung up the phone. To put it bluntly, my family is well off. This was largely due to my elite father, Harry, who has been flying around the world for work since his younger days. Although he was often away from home, he was kind to me and showered me with love whenever we had the chance to meet. I adored him dearly. However, to my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley, he was nothing more than an ATM. The harsh truth was that they were living lavishly on the money he earned. "Be righteous and kind, Maggie," he would say. His presence was always nurturing and supportive. He was my rock. That's why I was able to stay strong until now. Several months later, shortly after I graduated from university, a chilling event occurred. "Maggie, Dad has..." Karen burst into my room, her face as pale as a ghost. Apparently, my father had collapsed at the airport as soon as he returned home and was rushed to the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Ashley, Karen, and I immediately headed to the hospital. There, my once strong father lay frail and helpless. We suspect he's had a stroke, the doctor informed us. Despite extensive treatment, my father barely improved. To be specific, he was left with severe physical paralysis and a speech impairment, unable to stand or converse properly. To care for my now dependent father, I decided to put my dreams on hold and dedicate myself to his care at home. Predictably, Karen and Ashley completely ignored him, treating him as if he was useless. They didn't even help with his care, let alone come by to see him. "Mom, Ashley, if you helped with Dad's care once in a while, I'm sure he'd be really happy," I pleaded. However, their response was always the same. "We're too busy. We've left Dad's care to you." "Dad, it was a lovely day today," I would tell him. "Thank you," he would struggle to reply. I studied and learned about caregiving. I made sure he could see outside by keeping the curtains open, fed him specially prepared meals, and arranged fresh flowers every day. Though I had help from professional caregivers, I did everything I could for him with all my heart, remembering my father who had worked so hard for us and showered us with love. I was desperate to do everything. Whenever times got tough, I would recall my father's words, "Maggie, always be righteous and kind," and each time it gave me the strength to carry on. One day, I overheard Karen and Ashley whispering in the house. "Thanks to Dad's insurance money, I was able to buy that bag I wanted," Karen said. "I know, right? Thanks, Dad. Maybe I should get a new wallet too," Ashley chimed in. I held back from yelling at them and continued to listen, only to hear Karen utter something even more shocking. "If Dad were gone, we'd receive a few $100 million from his life insurance and inheritance he's been saving up through his job and investments." "Wow, Mom. And we should totally buy a luxury condo, and my boyfriend could live with us." "Oh, I wish Dad would hurry up and die." Indeed, I couldn't bear it any longer and left the scene. My father was struggling to stay alive, and yet they were spending his insurance money and dreaming about a luxury condo from his inheritance, wishing for him to die sooner. I felt like vomiting out of anger and despair. In reality, my mother and Ashley had been living it up recently, buying up brand name items and even leaving my father and me behind to go on overseas trips. But there was no way I could tell my father, who was already having such a hard time. I didn't want to sadden him. Pretending I hadn't heard my mother and Ashley's conversation, I devoted myself to taking care of my father. Many friends and acquaintances often came to visit him. They all loved him. I particularly remember an older man in a suit and glasses who often came. I wasn't present, but he was probably an executor from my father's company or something. He would bow his head and greet me whenever he saw me. I was happy that my father was loved, and on the days when he had visitors, his face seemed brighter. I thought these days would continue, but a few months later, my father had a stroke recurrence and suddenly passed away. I cried, clinging to my father's body that no longer spoke. Even my mother and Ashley shed tears this time, mourning the loss of my father. What followed was a whirlwind. There was a wake and a funeral to be held, and of course my mother, the chief mourner, did nothing. Neither did Ashley. In the end, I had to go through all the procedures by myself, running around in a rush. The wake ended, and many people attended the funeral, with numerous flowers arriving as well. Seeing the character and popularity my father had in life, I felt somewhat comforted. At the funeral, sobbing voices echoed, and my father, with a peaceful face, embarked on his journey. In the evening of the day when the first 7 days were over, I had finally started to recover a bit from the sadness. As I was cleaning up the 7th day, my mother and Ashley called me into the living room. Next to Ashley was a man who was said to be her fiancé. Like Ashley, he looked good, but given his former job as a male stripper, his inner frivolity was clear. Apparently, his name was John. "So about father's inheritance," my mom began. I had a terribly bad feeling, And then my mother, laughing scornfully, said something outrageous. We'll get a lot from your father's inheritance, so we decided to sell this house and live in a luxury condo. So you should leave. Mom, it's only been a week since Dad passed away. Are you already talking about the inheritance and the luxury condo? We've already signed the contract. It's a high-rise, brand new. You've already signed. When did you? About a month ago, I guess. A month ago. But Dad was still doing fine. He was practically dying. He had a lot of money, so it'll work out fine. My mother was selfish as ever. Ashley continued, yes, that's right. The luxury condos for Mom, me, and my fiancé. So, you're a nuisance. You should hurry up and find some shabby apartment, okay? Even you, sis? Are you serious? Of course. Don't even think about getting any of Dad's inheritance. We'll have you renounce it. You understand, right? Ashley was approaching me with a terrifying expression, and next to her, her fiancé was laughing. Seeing my father's inheritance in the corner of my eye made me feel suffocated. It was too much. They had the nerve to say such things before my dad's mourning was even over. You guys are the worst. I can't stand it anymore. I'm cutting ties with both of you. We'd actually feel relieved if you cut ties with us. My mother and Ashley laughed at me. I clenched my fists and started trembling. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. Straightening my trembling breath and wiping my tears, I'd opened the door, thinking it might be a late visitor. Good evening, my condolences for your loss. The man who deeply bowed his head at the entrance was the middle-aged man in a suit and glasses who frequently visited my father's sickbed. Thank you. Please come in. As I was about to invite him in, the man presented his business card. Please check this. My name is Watson, an attorney assigned by your father. The business card indeed belonged to a law firm, and although I had not noticed it before, a badge denoting him as a lawyer was gleaming on his chest. A lawyer? I was surprised. My mother, Ashley, and her boyfriend came out from behind. What does a lawyer want from us? Watson responded to my mother's skeptical expression. I've come to discuss your husband's inheritance. Can we talk for a moment? Watson sat down in the living room. My mother sat directly across from him, and Ashley and her boyfriend sat next to her. I ended up sitting on the side facing them alone. Watson took out several documents from his bag, looked at us, and then began to speak slowly. First, may I read your husband's will? That man could barely move or speak, and yet he left a will. Get on with it, please. My mother spoke in an irritated tone. Then allow me to read it, Watson said in a quiet voice. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths as follows. The testator leaves all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. A moment of silence fell upon the room. The testator designates the following as the executor of the will. Before Watson could continue reading, Ashley interrupted. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The testator designates the part before that. Let me read it again. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. What does that mean? Karen, our mother, and Ashley exclaimed in unison. I was so shocked that I couldn't breathe, and all I could do was stare in astonishment. Watson continued, Next, I will read the postscript of the will, looking at me. In other words, this is your father's final message. I quietly listened as he read. Maggie, you gave up your precious dreams to take care of me. I wasn't able to pay much attention to you because I was always working, but I truly appreciate it. Thanks to you, I was able to pass away peacefully and fulfilled. Upon hearing my father's last words from Watson, tears started to well up in my eyes. Maggie, always be kind and correct. I know you can do it. Your father will always be watching over you. Please be happy. All I could do was sob in front of them while Karen and Ashley were making a big fuss. What does that mean? So the inheritance all goes to her? Yes. What happens to our money? In response to their outburst, Watson cast a brief glance at them. You two are not mentioned, by the way. Maggie is also the sole beneficiary of the life insurance. What are you talking about? Do you think that's allowed? Karen turned beet red, ready to burst at any moment. That's right. Isn't there something called a reverse portion that's supposed to be guaranteed to the wife and the children, right? Ashley leaned forward eagerly. You're referring to the statutory reserve. Indeed, you two have the right to claim a statutory reserve from the inheritance Maggie will receive, Watson said in a matter-of-fact tone. Of course, Karen seemed to be getting back to her usual self. Even if there is a will, if its contents are unfair, you can claim a share of the inheritance prescribed by the civil law. However, Watson continued, Harry had commissioned us to investigate the fact that you, Karen, and you, Ashley, were living luxuriously with Harry's money and squandering the insurance money. The eyes of Karen and Ashley widened in astonishment. Indeed, you purchased a luxury condominium and a car, and you spend quite lavishly on host clubs and overseas trips. All the caregiving and household chores were left to Maggie alone. Moreover, there were even remarks hoping for Harry's death. My father knew everything. He knew everything but pretended not to know. That's my mother. Stammered Watson responded calmly. In this case, it's unlikely that the distribution of the inheritance will be deemed unfair. Even if you take it to court, it's very unlikely you'll be able to claim anything. Of course, you can try if you wish. I'll be the one you'll be set up against. My mother's face had turned a pale blue. That's ridiculous, my sister also muttered. When Watson was leaving and I walked him out to the entrance, he said, Maggie, you have grown up to be quite admirable. Your father always spoke of you with such joy. Really, my father has known your father since we were young, and I was honored to take on this request. Your father felt he was too lenient with the other two, but I believe he found peace knowing how well you turned out. Watson's eyes were squinted in a warm smile. I was so touched that I teared up again. Please live a happy life from now on. You know I'm always here to help. Watson left me with those words, and I kept bowing deeply to him. A year later, with Watson's help, I was able to inherit all of my father's assets. As for my mother and sister, my mother, unable to pay off the loans for the high-rise condominium, had already contracted the expensive car and the designer goods, eventually went bankrupt. My sister, on the other hand, was quickly abandoned by her boyfriend when he learned that she wouldn't be inheriting anything. I heard through the grapevine that she's now living with my mother and working part-time. They called me for a while, but I kept replying, I've cut ties with you. Please contact me through a lawyer. I thought that was what my father wanted too. Now they don't contact me at all. As for me, I used my father's inheritance to attend a law school I had once given up on. Originally, I wanted to become a prosecutor to uphold my father's words, always be kind and correct. But now my dream has changed. After working with Watson, who had saved me in my time of need and provided unwavering support, I started to admire being a lawyer myself. So now, I'm studying hard to become one. I strongly wish to become a lawyer like Watson, who is always just and kind.
I never intended to hide my success. Growing up in a modest Boston family, I learned early on that humility and perseverance mattered more than status. My father, a mechanic, would return home with grease-stained hands and a weary smile, while my mother worked back-to-back shifts as a nurse, determined to put me through college. Emily, she'd often say, success isn't measured by what you own, it's defined by who you are. Her words stayed with me. By 23, I had started a tech consulting firm in my garage. 2 years later, it had grown into M-Tech Solutions, now worth over $200 million. Yet, I kept a low profile, preferring the quiet satisfaction of working behind the scenes. Then I met Michael. Our paths crossed at a neighborhood coffee shop. I was absorbed in reviewing contracts, dressed in my usual jeans and sweater, when he accidentally knocked over my coffee. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, fumbling to save my papers. I couldn't help but laugh. "It's fine," I reassured him, even though those documents were acquisition agreements worth millions. His genuine panic was oddly charming. "Let me make it up to you," he insisted. "I'm Michael, by the way." "Emily," I said, smiling. And sure, I'll take you up on that coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a relationship. Michael was unlike anyone I'd ever met, kind, down to earth, and a high school teacher who genuinely loved his job. He never asked about my wealth, mainly because he didn't know about it. I told him I worked as an executive assistant at MTech Solutions. It wasn't entirely untrue. I did oversee administrative tasks, though as the company's owner, not an assistant. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. Things were perfect until I met his mother, Victoria. Victoria Patterson was the picture of social ambition. Her home was filled with imitation designer goods, and her conversations revolved around imaginary connections to high society. From the start, she disapproved of me. A secretary? She asked during our first dinner, her tone sharp. Michael, darling, wasn't there a surgeon's daughter I introduced you to? Mom, Michael said, clearly annoyed, but she pressed on. I just think, given our family status, you should aim higher. The Pattersons have always married well. The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael had already shared the truth of their middle-class life, propped up by credit card debt and appearances. I like my job. I replied simply, it's fulfilling. Victoria sniffed dismissively. Well, someone has to do those things, I suppose. Her passive-aggressive remarks became a fixture of family gatherings. At Christmas, while others received thoughtful gifts, I got a plain office planner. For keeping your boss's schedule, she said with a smirk. Michael often apologized privately but never confronted her outright. I understood. Family dynamics can be tricky. Then came the announcement that changed everything. One Sunday dinner, Victoria stormed into the room, brandishing a newspaper. MTech Solutions is looking for a new CEO. This is my chance. I nearly choked on my wine. While it was true we were seeking a CEO, the search was highly selective. You're applying? Michael asked, visibly surprised. Of course. After 20 years in middle management, it's time I moved into the big leagues, she declared, turning to me. Emily, put in a good word for me, would you? Though I doubt your recommendation carries much weight. I maintained a neutral expression. I'll see what I can do. Don't bother, she said with a wave. I've already called in favors. The board will be impressed by my credentials. Little did she know, I was the board. The following week, Victoria arrived at MTech Solutions for her interview, dressed in an over-the-top suit. I watched from my private office as she loudly proclaimed her qualifications in the lobby. Mrs. Patterson, my assistant called. The board is ready for you. Victoria straightened her posture and marched into the conference room. She froze the moment she saw me seated at the head of the table, flanked by board members. Emily, she sputtered. What are you doing here? Running my company, I said evenly. Please have a seat. Her face paled as the realization hit. This can't be. It is, one board member confirmed. Ms. Walker is our founder and majority shareholder. Victoria's carefully curated facade began to crumble. She stumbled into a chair as I opened her application file. Let's discuss your qualifications, I said, my tone all business. Her resume was riddled with embellishments, and I questioned each one. Her fabricated achievements and supposed connections unraveled quickly under scrutiny. I think we're done here, I concluded. Your application is disqualified due to misrepresentation. You can't do this, she cried. This is personal. No, it's professional, I replied. But since you brought up personal matters, yes, I've endured your insults and condescension for months. This isn't revenge, Victoria. It's accountability. She stormed out, muttering threats about exposing me to Michael. Go ahead, I thought, already reaching for my phone. It was time Michael knew the truth. Mom just called me crying, Michael said as he walked into my office, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. She said, you're her boss? Emily, what's going on? I motioned for him to sit down, taking a deep breath. Michael, there's a lot I need to explain. I wasn't completely honest about who I am. I didn't want to complicate things between us, but now it's unavoidable. Can I show you something? Minutes later, Michael stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in my office, his eyes scanning the breathtaking view of the city and the nameplate on my desk. Emily Walker, founder and CEO. He turned to the wall of awards and newspaper articles featuring my company, MTech Solutions. So, you're not a secretary, he said, his voice measured. No, I'm not, I admitted, standing beside him. I founded MTech when I was 23. The company your mom mocked me for working at? I built it from the ground up. He looked at me, hurt flashing in his eyes. Why would you hide something like this? Why lie? I wanted someone to see me, not my bank account, I said. Do you know how many people have tried to get close to me because of my money or status? I wanted to experience love for who I am, not for what I own. Michael sighed, his expression softening. I understand that, but you let my mother treat you horribly. You could have stopped this months ago. And what would that have accomplished? I asked. Proving her obsession with status, right? That wealth is what defines someone's value. I didn't want to play her game. Michael ran a hand through his hair. You're right. I should have defended you. I failed you there. Before I could respond, the office door burst open, and Victoria stormed in, dragging her husband George behind her. Her face was red with fury. There she is, the liar, the manipulator, she screeched. George, ever the quiet observer, stepped forward. Emily, this feels inappropriate. Using your position to reject Victoria over personal disagreements. I recorded the entire interview, I said, cutting him off. With the press of a button, Victoria's stumbling responses played over the speaker. This wasn't personal. Your wife lied on her application and misrepresented her qualifications. The board made their decision based on facts. Victoria's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? Just wait until everyone hears about this. The so-called genius CEO who pretended to be a secretary just to trick her way into our family. Mom, stop. Michael's voice thundered, silencing the room. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're humiliating all of us. Humiliating? She's the liar here. Victoria spat. No, Michael said firmly. Emily lied about one thing, her job. You've lied about everything else. Our family status, your connections, your accomplishments. It's all been a facade, and I'm done enabling it. Victoria's mouth fell open, and George placed a hand on her shoulder. Let's go, Victoria, he murmured. This has gone too far. This isn't over, she hissed as he led her out. You'll regret this, both of you. As the doors slammed behind them, silence filled the office. Michael turned to me, his face weary but resolute. I'm sorry for everything my family's put you through, but I need to know, where do we go from here? Before I could answer, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Walker, sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Patterson is in the lobby, causing a scene. Security is asking how to proceed. Michael and I exchanged a look. We handle it together, he said. I pressed the intercom, send security footage to my laptop and stand by. Only intervene if she disrupts operations. On the screen, we watched Victoria pacing the lobby, stopping employees to rant about me. Most ignored her, some rolling their eyes. But then she pulled out her phone. She's stealing clients, Victoria shouted, waving the phone in the air. I have proof right here, financial documents from Patterson Insurance. My blood ran cold. Those are confidential. How did she get them? Michael's face paled. She works in middle management at Patterson. She must have accessed the files. I was already dialing. Mr. Patterson, this is Emily Walker. Your employee, Victoria Patterson, is in my lobby threatening to expose confidential client information. Yes, I'll hold. Victoria's voice blared over the feed. I'll ruin her. She's been poaching our best clients. A sharp voice cut through the chaos on the screen. Victoria Patterson. A poised woman in a suit approached, flanked by two men. I'm Susan Chen, legal counsel for Patterson Insurance. You're hereby suspended pending investigation for violation of your non-disclosure agreement and attempted corporate espionage. Victoria stumbled back. No, you don't understand. We understand perfectly, Susan said coldly. Your access to confidential files has been monitored for weeks. This public outburst only confirmed our suspicions. Michael watched in stunned silence as his mother was escorted away, her protests growing fainter. He turned to me. Emily, I didn't know she was capable of this. It's not your fault, I said gently, but we need to address this openly, with your family, with mine, and with ourselves. Michael nodded, his voice steady. Together. As security led a stunned Victoria out of the building, Michael turned to me, his brow furrowed. You knew about her job performance? I found out during the merger discussions, I admitted. I plan to help her transition into a role better suited to her skills. That's part of why I kept my identity hidden. I needed to fully understand the situation before making decisions that would impact your family. Mr. Patterson, standing nearby, shook his head with a faint smile. Always thinking of others, Emily. It's one of the reasons I agreed to the merger in the first place. He straightened his jacket and added, "Don't worry about Victoria. We'll handle the legal aspects with discretion for Michael's sake." After he left, silence settled in the office. Michael sat across from me, staring out the window, lost in thought. "I need some time," he said at last. "This is a lot." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Take all the time you need." At the door, he paused, looking back at me. "For what it's worth, I fell in love with Emily the secretary. Knowing you're Emily the CEO doesn't change that. It just means I have more to learn about you." After he left, I remained at my desk, watching the city lights flicker on as night fell. My phone buzzed. A message from George, Michael's father. "Victoria's home, devastated. She knows what she's lost. When you're ready, we should talk. All of us. Family shouldn't end like this." The week that followed, I buried myself in work, giving Michael and his family the space they needed. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of Victoria's public meltdown. Corporate espionage involving two merging companies was too scandalous to ignore. Fortunately, both companies' PR teams managed to keep the damage under control. One late evening, as I was reviewing merger documents, my assistant buzzed in. "Ms. Walker, the Patterson family is here to see you." They entered together, George leading with calm authority, Michael, his expression unreadable, and finally Victoria, her usual confidence replaced by a tentative, vulnerable air. She wore simple business attire, a stark contrast to her usual designer wardrobe. "Emily," George began, his tone measured, "we need to talk. All of us." Victoria stepped forward, wringing her hands. "I've been in therapy this past week, intensive sessions. Losing the promotion, it broke me. Everything I built my identity around, my importance, my connections, it all crumbled." "You tried to hold on by grabbing more," I said quietly. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "When I saw the CEO posting, I convinced myself I deserved it, that everyone else had been holding me back. Then learning the truth about you, it shattered what little I had left." "Mom," Michael said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder, "there's more you need to tell her." Victoria took a shaky breath. "I've struggled for years. Shopping addiction, fabricating stories about our family's status. It all started when George's business hit trouble a decade ago. Instead of facing reality, I created a fantasy. It felt easier than admitting we weren't who I pretended us to be." George spoke up, his voice heavy with regret. "And I enabled it. I thought keeping up appearances would keep us afloat. But it only made things worse. The merger, is it still happening?" I nodded. "Yes. Victoria's actions hurt both companies, but they don't erase 2 decades of service. The merger includes a retirement package for long-term employees. It's hers if she wants it." Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. "After everything I've done?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said. "But there are conditions. Continued therapy, working with HR on a transition plan, and most importantly, honesty with yourself and others." Victoria broke down, her carefully constructed walls finally crumbling. "I'm sorry, Emily, for everything. For how I treated you, the things I said." Michael moved to my side and took my hand. "We've all learned something," he said. "Mom about honesty, Dad about enabling, me about standing up for what's right, and Emily about trusting people with the truth," I finished, moving forward. 2 months later, Victoria retired quietly. The merger proceeded smoothly, and she found new purpose volunteering at a financial literacy program, helping others avoid the mistakes she'd made. At our wedding the following spring, she gave a heartfelt speech that left few dry eyes. "A year ago, I thought status and appearances were everything, but my daughter-in-law taught me that true worth lies in how you treat others. Emily, thank you for giving our family a second chance, not because you're a CEO, but because you're a compassionate human being." Michael squeezed my hand under the table. We had rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of truth, moving past lies and pretenses. Looking around, I saw our merged family, George chatting with my father about business, Victoria helping my mother arrange flowers, our employees meeting with relatives. Success, I realized, meant nothing without people to share it with. Happy, Michael whispered. Very, I replied with a grin. Though I do miss that secretary desk sometimes. He laughed. Well, you did say your assistant's going on maternity leave. Don't tempt me, I teased. I might just go undercover again. Victoria overheard and joined our laughter, genuine this time, free from pretense. She'd found something far more valuable than status. Peace with who she truly was. As the celebration continued, I thought back to that first accidental coffee spill. It had led to this moment, proving that sometimes life's biggest blessings come disguised as chaos. Looking around at the people I loved, I knew success wasn't measured in dollars or titles. It was measured in second chances, hard truths, and the courage to be authentically yourself.